In the beginning, racing was about speed. Higher power, bullet-shaped profiles. The faster, the better. Speed was the main achievement of early racing cars, and many of the circuits were designed to promote it. High-bank tracks or fast public roads allowed racing cars to achieve 200-plus mile-per-hour speeds with nary a chicane to slow them down. Speed thrilled spectators. At a time when many were used to seeing horses as the main form of transportation, to see a racing car scream by at over 100 miles per hour, it was exhilarating. By the 1930s, the race car was entering its fourth decade of development and refinement, and engineering was on the verge of an important discovery. Here is a prime example of the peak of racing technology from before the Second World War, the Auto Union Type C. A development of the Type A, which was first raced in 1934, the Type C featured a massive 6-liter V16 engine, and with its root superchargers was said to output over 500 horsepower, reaching speeds of over 210 miles per hour with its standard Type C chassis. The straight-line speeds and power of these cars is impressive, even by modern standard. With 0 to 60 times of less than 5 seconds, the top Grand Prix cars of the 1930s would still look fast amongst many of today's sports and race cars. But for as fast as the race cars became in a straight line, the opposite was true when it came to cornering. Whether it was the tracks being straight and fast, which promoted the direction of car development, or the difficulty in building a maneuverable automobile, which dictated the track design, there's no arguing that after achieving the massive straight-line speeds of the 1930s, the next 90 years would be spent trying to keep it in the corners. In the pursuit of cornering speed, it was all hands on deck. The development of tires, brakes, suspension, and chassis construction all played important parts, developing year over year and slowly gaining lap speeds tenths at a time. But there was one development, one unexplored area of automotive design which would change the entire methodology for designing a race car. One modification which would unlock unheard of speeds and potential. One development which, after being discovered, could never be undone. That discovery was Downforce. Engineers of the 1930s were tantalizingly close. Auto Union and Mercedes both had their cars in wind tunnels, trying to apply the brand new science of aerodynamics to improve them. But using principles of design at the time resulted in a misdirection in what would be the most productive way to use aerodynamics, having them focus their time on streamlining cars to make them slippery and more easily go through the air to achieve higher top speeds, rather than apply the concepts elsewhere. Ferdinand Porsche did design a prototype speed record car in the final days before World War II, which had winglets, essentially upside-down airplane wings to give the vehicle downforce, but it was never tested before the outbreak of the war. It wasn't until some 20 years later that wings as we know them would first appear on a racing car. And in a somewhat unlikely scenario, young German driver and engineer Michael May showed up to the 1956 Nürburgring 1,000 kilometers with his Porsche 550 Spyder sporting a massive aerofoil on the roof. The wing, which featured in-cockpit adjustment, was said to create 1,200 pounds of downforce at 100 miles per hour. May's design proved successful, allowing him to outperform his class in testing, but his success only made him a target. Then acting Porsche racing boss Huschke von Hanstein became annoyed with the private entrance speed and had racing organizers ban the aerofoil, citing it blocked visibility with other racers and could be dangerous in the event of a crash. Michael May was forced to remove the aerofoil and never raced with it again. 10 years later now, in 1966, a small, innovative vehicle designer from Texas named Jim Hall unveiled their latest design, the Chaparral 2E, forever unleashing the idea of wings into the racing world. Jim Hall and his Chaparral team had been developing using aerodynamics for downforce for a few seasons, racing in the World Sports Cars and Can-Am events. But never had a design been so obviously different. The 2E with its massive adjustable wing attracted a lot of attention. And while the 2E would only score one win in 1966, The effect of downforce was apparent and unleashed a wave of designs across different teams and cars over the next few years. Colin Chapman is often credited with bringing Jim Hall's idea of aero downforce to Formula One. In preparation for the 1968 Monaco Grand Prix, Chapman and his Team Lotus fitted small front wings and a spoiler to Graham Hill's Lotus 49. In the event, Graham Hill would take the pole 0.6 of a second up over second place and run away to an easy victory, leading every lap. At the next round at Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix, Ferrari fitted a true aeroplane-style wing behind driver Chris Amon on his Ferrari 312. With the device, Amon was able to capture pole and perform 5 full seconds faster than his teammate Jack Ickx, driving identical cars except for the wings. By the next Formula One race at Zandvoort, nearly every F1 team had an aerodynamic device. And the story only gets crazier from there. Aerodynamics and downforce, the multiple different ways to produce it, and how it changed racing for the better or for the worse is an amazing story. In reading about aero design in the 1930s Mercedes and Auto Union teams, it's fascinating but almost frustrating to think how close they were to implementing downforce on their cars, even having some ideas for it that were never used. The design of the first aerofoils and wings used in the 1960s and early 70s were basic but effective, so simple that it seems like anybody could have thought of it, but no one had. All of the basis for understanding its effects existed for decades since the invention of the airplane, but it took almost 60 years for it to be properly applied to motorsports. So let me introduce to you the creation for today's test. This is the 1937 Auto Union Type C with a slightly obvious wing mounted over the cockpit from a super modified. The car itself is completely unchanged. This is Gary Patterson's Auto Union Type C for Assetto Corsa, 500 horsepower, breathing fire V16, going over 220 miles an hour in a straight line. An excellent representation of interwar Grand Prix cars. And so I've gone ahead and mounted a massive wing from a super modified over the top. And for those of you that don't know what a super modified is, it's somewhat like a sprint car, but for the asphalt, short ovals, super high power, amazing cars in their own right, and probably owe a video for them at some point. But I wanted to go with something somewhat basic for the wings. I toyed with having maybe modern F1 wings on the car or something like that, but I feel in the spirit of this idea, this is something that I think engineers in the 1930s could have come up with. It's not far off from what was mounted to Michael May's Porsche Spyder in 1956. And so big wing on the top, it's not movable, not hydraulic, so it is fixed in position, but it should produce roughly 2,200 pounds of downforce on the car. And so I've gone ahead and updated both the visuals and the physics model of the car to add this additional wing both in weight and downforce to see how it changes the characteristics of driving a car like this. There's very little doubt in my mind that this won't be faster than the car without the wing, but I'm interested to see how it changes the characteristic of driving. It's the same tires and brakes and obviously engine, so the car's going to drive a lot the same, but you'll notice that downforce come in, especially at mid to high speeds, and help control the car. So through slow stuff, I'd actually expect maybe the car be worse to drive because the wing does add weight, but obviously at high speed, it'll help out quite a lot. And for a testing track, I've brought you to the wonderful Nürburgring Südschleife. The Südschleife itself, not as popular obviously as the Nordschleife, but it was used quite a lot as a testing track since it was a shorter lap, still had a lot of the same characteristics as the Nordschleife. Cars could get around after making a change to them quite a lot faster, come back to the pits, talk to the engineers and things. So feels like a fun track to test on. Also being based in Germany helps fit with what we're trying to do here. It's from Sergio Loro over at F3 Classic Tracks, and he has this Südschleife version. It's different than the Gesamtstrecke Nordschleife Südschleife 60s version that I've raced before, but I've actually also raced on this version of the Südschleife before. Highly recommend it if you like racing the F2, F3 cars since they raced a lot around here back in the 60s. So to kick things off, I'm going to go out and do a lap with the standard Auto Union Type C without the wing, try to get an impression for what it drives like around this track, see what the time is, and then we'll take out this winged version and compare the two. so we're on the backside of the start-finish complex here, coming to end the outlap at the Südschleife. We'll actually cut right before we would go onto the Nürburgring here, across the Bentenschleife. But this one's going to be hard. I just got to try to keep it on the track for the whole lap. Just roll through here. Concrete makes it really slippery. But we'll cut across and start. Hopefully a good lap in the normal Auto Union type seat. Get the throttle down, a lot of oversteer. It's all about controlling the power and come across the line to start the lap. All right, second gear, we'll keep it in second for most of this lap. We'll come down to the first corner where we'll grab first for a second. All right, down to first gear, try not to over rev it too much. Throw it in. Try to hug the corner as well as you can, then jump down here onto the Südschleife. There we go, down the hill, a lot of bumps. Come down to first gear. Take full advantage of the track width wherever I can. Carry as much speed as you can, and just wherever you can, get on the throttle a little bit, squeeze out some power. I come through a series of S's. Double left-hander here, coming to a sharper right again. Oh, locking up the brakes a whole bunch. Grab some of the dirt on the inside. Now, a little bit of space to get up to speed for a second in second gear. So we'll come up to another right-hander. This one you got to be a little careful. There's a pothole kind of to the right on the exit, so we'll keep it tucked in a little bit. There we go. Now head down the hill. Come up to what I think is the most challenging corner, a hidden right-hander that sneaks up on you, especially in this car. Throw it in. It's tighter than you think it would be. I still almost run wide there. There we go. Catch the back end. Come around. Just kind of suggesting where the car should go. But head over a bridge. We'll come up to a deceptively quick right-hander. Just need to get the line right. Throw it in. All right up to the edge. There we go. Hold on to it. That one will be good for some downforce. We'll come to the town, though, of Mühlenbach. Right at the bottom of the Südschleife. First gear, just tiptoe it around, try to wait to get on the power, right out to the edge, cross a bridge, and head up the hill back towards the start-finish complex. But a few tricky corners left. Very fast through this section. We'll come up to an S, try to keep it in second gear, but you need to throw the car in nice and early, not to oversteer there, or understeer off the track, rather. Come through the second part of it. There we go, making it through. Just one real corner left here. I think it's called Hothead. Come down to first gear. It's a tricky one. Easy to run wide on the exit. It just keeps going on and on. Not the best line, but we'll make it through. Right back up to second. Just easy on the power as the track unwinds and you start to head up this steep hill and back towards the start-finish complex. All right, flat out, we got some bumps at the top of the hills. We'll shift right up to third as we crest. And flat out, over the top, 140 miles an hour, 150. Almost gonna red line in third gear at 160. Now get on the brakes. Nice and hard, down to second. Maybe could get on slightly later there, but then down to first. It's easy to run wide, still gonna do it just a little bit. We'll come to the concrete section then. And try not to slide wide in the final couple of corners. Oh, it's so slow. Just trying to wait for the car to rotate, get on the throttle, walk it out of the final corner, into the line, complete the lap. Oh, 3:30.489. This car is such a workout around this track, but that's a pretty good time compared to where I've been testing. So 3.5 minutes, 0.489. Interested to see how the downforce helps out. I think there's a fair number of corners around this track, maybe even this first one, that aren't quite fast enough for the downforce to actually kick in. But there are a few very fast corners, and I think no doubt it'll help there, but it'll be interesting to see if this whole first section of the track is faster or not. All right, so a 3:30.489. Not too bad compared to some of the testing times I've been doing, but it's going to be tricky, I think, even still with the downforce. There's quite a few slow corners that until you get up to 60, 70 miles an hour, the downforce really doesn't kick in a ton. But at that point, it's good. So through some of the fast ones, it'll definitely keep me stuck to the track. We'll just have to see how well it pays off over the whole lap. So coming down the back of the start-finish complex, and you can definitely notice there's a wing. I got a huge roll cage around me. It's almost like a sprint car. But we'll come through the final couple of corners. You can tell it's there when you're driving. The car feels a lot heavier, actually, a lot heavier than I think it would, or that I thought it would. So that'll be a detriment to it, but have some downforce at higher speeds, so we'll see what it does to the lap time overall. Come through the final corner, get the throttle down, up to second gear, rear end kicking out there, but come across the line and start the lap. Head down towards the first corner and have to brake very similar spots to get the car slowed down. Still have the same brakes and tires and everything. Down to first gear here for the first corner. Throw it in, nice and tidy line. A little more stuck that time, but come now onto the Südschleife, over the top of the hill. Car flying in the air. Come into the tighter S's, and this is where I think the wing might actually hurt the car. We're not quite fast enough to take advantage of a lot of the downforce, so it just adds weight. We'll wallow our way here through the left and right handers. Understeering a lot there. Get back on the throttle. Up to second gear just for a second. Double left-hander. Coming to a right-hander here. That'll set us up for a little bit of a faster section. Get it up to second now. On a little straight here, we'll head towards the corner with the pothole on the outside. Slow down a little early. Lock in the right front. Take some dirt. There we go. On the exit then. Down the hill. And head towards the tricky corner. Brake plenty early down to first gear again. Tidier that time. Now throttle up. We got the fast sections coming up towards the end of the lap. I think where the wing's going to help the most. The car is still bouncing around a lot. It has the same driving characteristics. It's just a little different to this fast right-hander. A little less hectic that time. Mühlenbach laid in front. Down to first gear for the entry. Slide the car, nice drift around. You know, I will say the whole car feels a little bit more predictable. It might not be faster. I'm actually curious to see what this lap time is going to be because it is so much heavier. But come up the hill then, flat out here, second gear. We'll keep it in second. Get towards the top of the rev range. Come up for the chicane here. Turn it in nice and early. Get back on the throttle. Through the second half. Ooh, we're going to understeer a little bit there, but there we go. Through these quick switchbacks and head towards this tight corner right-hander. Just let the car try to grip back up. Wing should hopefully help us as we head up the hill here. Try to get the power down a little earlier. Car still works its way to the outside of the track, but there we go. Down, full throttle, second gear. We'll head up the hill. See what kind of top speed we get to with the wing on it. Might be slightly down. Up to third gear there over the bumps. 140. It's not too far off what it was, 150. All right, then brake hard. It's down to second gear. Down to first. Don't want to slide wide here at the end of the lap. Get it onto the Bentonschleife. Slow on the inside. It feels so slow. Get back on the power into the final corner. Nice line through there. Throttle back up towards the line. Looking at the clock. There we go. 3:24.559. Wow, so almost 6 seconds faster, if I'm doing my math right, with the wing. It's interesting because in places it's harder to control actually than the car without the wing. I think the car overall feels a little less nimble. I don't know if you could tell through these first sections, the first half of the lap until you get up to Mühlenbach there. There's a lot of tight parts of the course, and so having the extra 150 pounds with all the wing and everything actually hurts you through here. I don't think you're going quite quick enough at 40 to 60 miles an hour to get too much downforce, but certainly once you get to the higher speeds, the car grips up better. It is a little more predictable at the higher speeds than without the wing, which would make sense. So everything seems logical, but a 6-second per lap gain, you know, maybe a little more, a little less, depending on how well you do the laps. So a 6-second per lap gain with the wing over a 3.5 minute lap is quite a lot of time, and give or take a second or two depending on how fast you're driving on both sides, but at least a few seconds picked up on a relatively medium-sized course with some downforce. I don't think the wing is super far off what would have been possible to do in the 1930s. It is a 2-plane wing with 2 separate wing elements, but simple side panels on it and just some tubing. If you look at the things they were designing for suspension and chassis, the wing itself is very simple, and all it would have taken, I think, is that idea. And some had that idea, but it wasn't really tested and just wasn't something that was found until much, much later. So you never know what type of innovation is going to come along and totally change the world of racing. Maybe the application of aerodynamics and downforce is that special something that will never come along again, but you'd never quite know what the next innovation is going to be, and that's one of those things that keeps auto racing so exciting. So hope you enjoyed this. Just a quick experiment. I always wanted to see what an interwar or pre-war car would have been with some downforce on it, and definitely quicker, but it doesn't totally change the driving characteristic of the car, which is cool to see. It still drives like an old Grand Prix car, but you can go a little faster through the fast corner. So I hope you enjoyed this. It's been a while since I've done one of these experiment videos, but I'm always thinking and jotting down ideas for what might be fun. So if you have any ideas or something that you'd want to see that you think would fit, let me know. Maybe I'll throw something new together sometime soon. But until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again next time.